From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana, Siddiqui. First, the headlines. Tens of thousands join anti-war rallies around the world. Russian invasion has now created 2.8 million refugees. Pakistan demands joint probe over India accidentally firing ballistic missile. A dozen ballistic missiles target U.S. consulate in Iraq. Researchers estimate COVID-19 killed 18 million people. Ohio Muslims celebrate passage of bill allowing hijab in sports. Our top story tonight. Tens of thousands of anti-war demonstrators took to the streets in cities globally over the weekend, voicing protest against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In Germany, a sea of people carrying yellow and blue signs reading "Stop Putin" and "Stop the War" gathered Sunday at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate. Police estimated a turnout of between 20,000 and 30,000 people in the capital. In Frankfurt, around 11,000 people gathered peacefully. Marches also took place in Stuttgart, Leipzig, and Hamburg. In Taiwan's capital, Taipei, hundreds protested as the fighting enters its third week. However, pro-Russian demonstrations were held in Serbia. Hundreds rallied in the capital, Belgrade, on Sunday. Protesters joined a convoy of cars with the infamous Z signs emblazoned on vehicles. The English letter Z is the Russian symbol for victory. Moscow has also been Serbia's ally in the United Nations, where its veto blocks international recognition of Serbia's breakaway province of Kosovo. The United Nations on Monday said the number of refugees fleeing Ukraine has climbed to more than 2.8 million. It has become Europe's fastest growing refugee crisis since World War II. European Union officials say the number of refugees is likely to reach 5 million. Over 1 million Ukrainian refugees are in Poland, which just months ago pushed back Muslim refugees entering through Belarus. In related news, an American journalist was shot dead and another wounded Sunday in Irpin, a frontline suburb of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. The reporter was identified as 50-year-old video documentary shooter Brent Renault of New York. Time magazine released a statement Sunday saying Renault was in the region working on a Time Studios project on the global refugee crisis. The International Federation of Journalists identified the wounded journalist as American photographer Juan Arredondo. A third victim, a Ukrainian who had been in the same car as the Americans, was also wounded. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday offered to help fighters from the Middle East who want to support the rebel regions of Donbass to come to Ukraine. Putin explained his decision at a meeting of the Russian Security Council in Moscow. He added, Ukraine's Western sponsors and its government do not hide hiring mercenaries. They do it openly, ignoring all norms of international law. He pledged support for people who want to come on a voluntary basis, not for money, to support people living in Donbass. Shia mercenaries have been fighting in Syria. ISIS has also relied heavily on foreign fighters. A mosque in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol remains intact amid clashes in and around the city, the head of the Mosque Association said Saturday. Ismail Haji Oghlu, who heads the Association of Qanuni Sultan Suleiman Mosque, said the Russian army has surrounded the city and has been shooting from its center. He said civilians who are stranded in the city need essential goods, including water and food. A rocket fell Friday around the mosque area, which currently houses 30 Turkish nationals, he said. Earlier, Ukraine claimed the mosques had been bombed. Pakistan on Saturday demanded a joint probe into the accidental firing of an Indian missile that landed in Pakistani territory last week. New Delhi on Friday acknowledged the missile accidentally fired during a routine maintenance due to a technical malfunction. The missile landed in Pakistan about 150 miles from the Indian border. The Pakistani government said the grave nature of the incident raises several fundamental questions about security protocols and technical safeguards to prevent unauthorized launch of missiles. India and Pakistan both have about 100 nuclear bombs each. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan said that we could have responded to the Indian missile, but we observed restraint. A dozen ballistic missiles targeted Iraq's northern city of Erbil, including the U.S. consulate on Sunday. The attack caused damage, but no major casualties, Kurdish security forces said. Kurdish authorities said the missiles came from beyond the eastern border, suggesting the source was Iran. Iran wields considerable political and economic influence over its neighbor. Iraq is home to a dwindling number of U.S. troops who led a coalition fighting ISIS. Washington has blamed rocket and drone attacks against its interests in Iraq on pro-Iran groups who have demanded the departure of the remaining troops. Sunday's attack on Erbil comes nearly a week after 2 officers from Iran's Revolutionary Guard were killed in Syria in a strike attributed to Israel. A new study suggests the COVID-19 pandemic may have claimed over 18 million lives worldwide by the end of 2021. More than 3 times the official death toll. The higher global casualty estimate is believed to be more realistic, according to analysis by a consortium of health researchers published in the medical journal The Lancet. Researchers based their calculations on the number of excess deaths, which they believe were caused directly or indirectly by the pandemic. These were calculated by comparing the difference between the number of recorded deaths from all causes and the number of expected deaths based on previous patterns. We're bringing more news stories after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. Brothers and sisters, we all watch the Allahu Akbar lady from India. She's amazing, isn't she? She's neither compromising her hijab nor her education. She's standing tall. We must stand with her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect her. But it is not just hijab, brothers and sisters. Indian Muslims are facing genocide.
Genocide that we face in India is not a new phenomenon. India has had several genocides.
They are attacked every day. Even the Indian government admits there has been more than 1,800 organized attacks on Muslims, but they call it riot. 660 people are hanged to death in India, lynched in broad daylight, sometimes just because they were accused of eating beef. Yes, accusation of eating beef can kill a human being in India. We cannot remain silent, can we? Alhamdulillah, OIC has spoken, that is good, but why in the world United Nations is silent? The UN has a responsibility to protect. It has a duty to prevent genocide. Sisters and brothers, we must stand with Indian Muslims and other minorities. We are free, they are not. We are not attacked, they are under attack day and night. Let's do our job. I have signed this UN petition. I ask you to sign it now. Thank you so much.
A Chatham County woman said her son experienced a slave auction last week at J.S. Water School in Goldston, North Carolina. A group of white students at the school reportedly auctioned off black students for money, with one student playing the role of slave master. The mother said she had a video of students harmonizing racial slurs, according to the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR. CAIR condemned the mock slave auction and called on the school board to offer anti-racist curriculum to students. Students who allegedly participated in the auction were suspended for a day, but no punishment was given to those seen in the video, the mother said. One of the students reportedly hit a black student with a baseball repeatedly. Chatham County Schools recently sent a community letter condemning those and other racist incidents in the district. A political advertisement about Russia labels the Republican Party as the party of treason. A Raw story reports that the ad chronicles the events since Russia invaded Ukraine. It was released by Really American, a Progressive Political Action Committee, or PAC, according to Huffington Post. The video highlights Independence Day in 2018, when several Republican lawmakers visited the Kremlin. The PAC tweeted, "A day after the Senate Intelligence Committee confirmed Russia interfered in our elections, 8 Republicans flew to Russia for a photo op. Now they're blaming Biden for the invasion of Ukraine, repeating Kremlin talking points." The now viral video asks why Republicans have taken the side of Russian President Vladimir Putin. U.S. and international civil and human rights organizations called on the Biden administration to pardon the Holy Land Foundation 5. Shukri Abu Bakr, Ghassan Al-Ashi, Mufid Abdul Qadir, Abdurrahman Odeh, and Muhammad Al-Mizan are prominent Palestinian-American philanthropists. They once ran the largest Muslim charity in the United States. The Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development was shut down by the Bush administration and designated a terrorist organization in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. The foundation donated money to Palestinian charities that the U.S. government once supported. Its leaders are serving sentences of up to 65 years in federal prison. Abrar Ghazi and Nasreen Shakur celebrated the passing of Ohio's Bill 181, ending discrimination against student athletes due to religious expression. Ghazi is a junior and member of the basketball team at Lake Erie College. She said the process of getting a waiver to wear the hijab and participate in sports was grueling. Shakur is 16 and part of the rowing team at Laurel School in Shaker Heights. She said the acceptance and growth in 2022 is amazing. As a middle schooler, Shakur admitted to being taunted and sometimes threatened by classmates because of her religion. A new survey has found more than 80% of American voters believe costs are rising, partly due to big corporations jacking up prices and raking in record profits. It comes on the heels of latest data showing the U.S. inflation rate jumped to a new 40-year high last month. The poll revealed that 82% of registered U.S. voters blame big companies for some of that inflation. They want elected officials to take on powerful CEOs and rein in corporate greed to lower prices. The survey was released Friday by the advocacy group Fight Corporate Monopolies. It shows rising prices is the top economic issue for most voters. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs,
and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. To discuss the economic marginalization of Native Americans, let's go to Edward Ahmed Mitchell. Over to you, Edward.
Thank you, Samana. Greatly appreciated. Now we'd like to move to an important discussion, the state of the Native American community of Indigenous Americans and the economic challenges that continue to face their community, including many Muslims who are, in fact, Indigenous Americans. To discuss this important topic, I'd like to bring on today Dedrick Asante Muhammad, who is the Chief of Membership Policy and Equity at the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. Dedrick, assalamu alaikum. Welcome.
Walaikum salam. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate it. So first, tell us a bit about yourself and the organization and what it does, and then we'll dive into the topic.
Sure. Again, Dedrick Asante Muhammad. I'm Chief of Membership Policy and Equity, which means I oversee 4 departments here at the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, membership, policy, research, and organizing. And National Community Reinvestment Coalition is an organization founded to be supporter and an advocate around the Community Reinvestment Act, an important piece of legislation passed in 1977. We have over 600 different community membership organizations where we work to kind of advance best practices and best policy as it relates to community economic development.
Well, that's wonderful. And you noted this legislation was passed way back in 1977. And so you're continuing to make sure that legislation is working for the benefit of the people it was meant to help. Tell us more about that. And have Native Americans been some of the beneficiaries of this investment fund?
Yes, I do think, the Community Reinvestment Act helps to push banks, private corporations with a public charter to make sure that they are not solely servicing the wealthiest in society, the most elite. And they have to, through the CRA, have to go through a review and get graded upon, if they are giving a certain amount of loans, different types of philanthropy, if they're investing in low to moderate income communities. And so, we knew when, it's been known that passing the legislation is one piece. The next step is to make sure that it is enacted properly. And one weakness we've seen is that it hasn't addressed racial economic inequality in the way we would like. And so we're trying to push for that advancement today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about the Native American community. There's a very interesting article that came out that went into detail about something that many people may be aware of, but maybe not as much as they should be. And that is the severe economic challenges that continue to face the Native American community, Indigenous Americans. And it talks specifically about rates of home ownership, rates of employment, other such things. Can you tell us a bit about some of the unique challenges that face Native Americans in this country?
Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation around racial economic inequality, the racial wealth divide, but not as much focused on Native Americans and how this racial economic inequality affects their communities. And we see in many ways, they're quite similar to the African American community, having lower median income numbers. And the most recent numbers we have for Native Americans is they make a median average $44,000 a year, as compared to African Americans who are making $46,000, but then compared to whites who are making almost $75,000. So we see distinct differences there. We see in home ownership, Native Americans do better than African Americans, around 51% home ownership, but still not close to the 73% home ownership that whites have. And we see in unemployment, African Americans and Native Americans have fairly similar and high unemployment rate. So we see that these communities with a long history of economic marginalization continue to be economically marginalized economically today.
And it's fascinating because when you compare African Americans and Native Americans, and you notice that even now in 2022, they're still behind the eight ball, so to speak. And that speaks to the generational trauma, the generational disadvantages that continue to haunt people simply because they are descended from either people who suffered genocide, Native Americans, and were kicked off their land, who were brought to this land against their will and enslaved. And their their descendants still continue to suffer the consequences of that. So what are some of the solutions to this problem? For Native Americans in particular, but also in general, and obviously your organization works on some of these things. How can we help to move the needle on this? And is not all we can do is move the needle, or is it going to take some sort of drastic new government policy to make a real difference in these statistical disadvantages that we're seeing?
Well, and just first to address the point you made around the history being seen in the present, I oftentimes state that the foundation of racial inequality is racial economic inequality. And the foundation of racial economic inequality is the racial wealth divide, because that difference in wealth does carry across generations. In this country, so much of this country's wealth was made off of the land of Native Americans, was made off of enslaved African Americans. And we see this wealth concentration still continues among whites, and that there haven't been policies put in place to specifically address that issue. Again, we talked about the Community Reinvestment Act and it focused on low and moderate income, But now we're saying that the Community Reinvestment Act should have a racial focus, making sure that there's racial equity. And, it will take, fundamental change, to get African-American home ownership that's around 43%. We have a goal of, we want all community groups to have 60% home ownership rate. Again, whites have around 73%. Asian Americans have a little over 60%. But Latinos have around a 47%. Native Americans around 51%. And African Americans are 43%. So it'll take substantive increases to get these communities at 60%. And I think it's going to require, great investment into down payment assistance, into, I think, even subsidized mortgages. There are some important legislation to back Native lending to Native Americans in particular. And we've seen an increase. Native Americans are doing, substantively better than African Americans at 51%. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done to get them to that 60% threshold, particularly funding and subsidizing home ownership on tribal lands, where we see that there seems to be very little willingness by private lending institutions to do that type of lending.
It's important you mention those private institutions, because one of the challenges that people face in home ownership is even if they've got potentially the money to buy a home, they still have banks that can be discriminatory, deny them that chance to get a loan. You could have a black family, white family, same income, but that white family might have a greater chance of getting approved than the black family, not to mention the Native American family. So I wonder if, if we're talking about the private sector, whether perhaps private Islamic financing companies have some role to play. Maybe they could make this part of their mission to tackle this. For those who don't know, Muslims generally consider interest-based loans to be forbidden, to be inherently immoral. And so you've got Islamic financing companies that try to fund house owning, house purchasing for Muslims and anyone else who wants to get an interest-free loan. And so I wonder if those companies, those banks, can take it upon themselves to make sure they are reaching out to and encouraging Native Americans to apply, and hopefully not to face the discriminatory hurdles they might face, at a major bank. And that won't solve the problem at all. It's a huge, massive problem and a big financial problem, as you just noted. But maybe that's a small part of it that can be addressed and that our community can help to address. So tell me this, Didrik. So, in terms of your organization, what are the big things you're focusing on, right now moving forward, and anything people in the community or the public can do to help the work that you're doing?
Well, I just want to, support that idea you put forward. I mean, I think there is a big market gap, a lack of financial institutions willing to lend the usually lower value lending that is needed for African Americans and Latinos, and as you pointed out, interest-free, packaged in a different way. So I think if Muslim financial institutions made that a specialty, I think they would have a big market opportunity. And you see large financial institutions oftentimes fund CDFIs, community development financial institutions, smaller banks who are willing to do the type of loans they're not willing to do in mass at a larger scale. And so there's, many different funding opportunities for smaller financial institutions to play this type of role. So I think that's a very strong idea. And, with the long history of African Americans and Islam in this country, I think this could be a perfect market for them. And so, we supported NCRC financial institutions developing these types of unique programs, showing what they can do. We, are putting forward again that the Community Reinvestment Act should address race outright. That should be one of the factors that banks are judged upon, and to make the criteria that banks are judged upon more quantitative, more quantitative and clear, because it's, financial institutions pass like 90% of the time, even though we're not seeing bridging of these deep racial and economic inequalities. So we need much stronger judging and measurement with banks through the CRA process.
Excellent. Well, tell us, what's the website of your organization if you want to visit and learn more?
Sure, ncrc.org. If they want to learn more about Native Americans and racial economic inequality, they could just Google Racial Wealth Divide Snapshot Native Americans, and that's on the NCRC website.
Excellent. And one more question. So in terms of I think one of we're aware that the Muslim community in America is very diverse: Black, white, Arab, Pakistani, Indian, all manner of East Asian Muslims. But we don't often think about or see the many Native American Muslims that do exist, many converts. Can you tell us a bit about the Native American Muslim community, just to educate our viewers a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't done a study in particular on Native American Muslims, but I think oftentimes people think of Native Americans as being solely located in tribal lands in the Midwest in very rural areas. But the Native American population reflects the American population. There are more Native Americans in New York City than any other city because New York City is such a big city. So you have, plenty of Native Americans in urban environments where there's much more likely to be mosque and Muslim communities. And I think similar again to African Americans who've been looking for alternatives to what's been traditionally in America, looking for different types of communities to be supportive of them. And so I think there's a lot, even further opportunity to strengthen the relationship between Muslim communities and Native Americans in this country.
Absolutely, inshallah. Thank you so much, brother. Jazakallah khair. It's been a pleasure talking to you and learning from you. And we look forward to having you on again in the future, inshallah. Until then, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
And now, Samana, we'll go back to you.
Thank you, Edward. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.